Welcome, fellow traveler on the path of inner strength. What you are about to experience is not just another collection of motivational phrases or temporary emotional band-aids. Before watching the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. New audiobook videos are posted on this channel every day. This is a comprehensive blueprint for transforming yourself into an emotionally unshakable warrior, someone who stands firm when others crumble, who finds clarity when chaos surrounds them, and who emerges stronger from every challenge life presents. The journey we are embarking on together requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to confront the deepest parts of yourself. It demands that you question everything you thought you knew about emotions, strength, and resilience. But I promise you this, if you commit fully to this path, you will discover a version of yourself that you may have glimpsed only in your most powerful moments, a self that can weather any storm without losing its center. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Emotional Resilience. Let me begin by asking you a question that may seem simple on the surface but holds profound depths. What does it truly mean to be emotionally resilient? Most people believe resilience is about being tough, about not feeling pain, about building walls so high that nothing can hurt them. This understanding is not just incomplete, it is fundamentally wrong and will lead you down a path of emotional suppression that creates more suffering than it prevents. True emotional resilience is not the absence of emotional response. It is not about becoming a robot, devoid of feelings, mechanically moving through life untouched by its beauty and its pain. Rather, emotional resilience is the capacity to experience the full spectrum of human emotion while maintaining your fundamental equilibrium, your core stability, your essential self. Think of a mighty oak tree standing in a fierce storm. The wind howls, the rain pounds, the branches bend and sway dramatically. But notice what happens. The tree does not resist the storm with rigid inflexibility. If it did, it would snap and break. Instead, it moves with the wind, its branches dancing in the gale, yet its roots remain firmly anchored in the earth. When the storm passes, the tree returns to its natural position, perhaps with a few broken twigs, but fundamentally unchanged, fundamentally whole. This is the essence of emotional resilience. You will feel anger, sadness, fear, disappointment, and grief. These emotions are not your enemies. They are information, they are energy, they are part of the rich tapestry of human experience. The warrior does not flee from these feelings or pretend they do not exist. The warrior acknowledges them, experiences them fully, and then allows them to pass through without being permanently altered by them. Let me share with you a neuroscientific truth that will fundamentally reshape how you understand your emotional life. Your brain is not designed to make you happy. It is designed to keep you safe. This is why your mind constantly scans for threats, why negative experiences imprint more deeply than positive ones, why your thoughts spiral toward worst-case scenarios. This negativity bias was useful when our ancestors faced predators on the savannah, but in modern life, it often creates unnecessary suffering. Understanding this mechanism is the first step toward emotional mastery. When you recognize that your brain's default setting is protection rather than peace, you stop taking every anxious thought, every fearful feeling, every negative emotion as absolute truth. You begin to observe your internal experience with a slight distance, with curiosity rather than identification. You learn to ask, is this emotion providing useful information, or is it simply my ancient brain overreacting to a perceived threat? The amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in your brain, acts as your personal alarm system. When it detects potential danger, it triggers the fight or flight response faster than your conscious mind can process what is happening. Your heart rate increases, stress hormones flood your system, blood flow redirects from your thinking brain to your muscles. This happens in milliseconds, long before you consciously choose how to respond. This is why you sometimes snap at someone and only later realize you overreacted, or why you feel anxious without being able to identify a specific threat. But here is what changes everything: you can train your brain. You can strengthen the connection between your prefrontal cortex, the seat of conscious reasoning, and your amygdala, the alarm center. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you consciously choose your response, you are building neural pathways that make calm, measured responses more automatic. You are literally rewiring your brain for resilience. This brings us to the warrior mindset, a concept that transcends cultural boundaries and appears in various forms across human history, from the Stoics of ancient Rome to the samurai of feudal Japan, from the Spartan warriors of Greece to the modern special forces operators who face extreme pressure with remarkable calm. The warrior mindset is built on a single, powerful principle: external conditions do not determine your internal state. You determine your internal state. This is not positive thinking or denial of reality. It is a profound recognition that between any event and your response to that event lies a space, and in that space resides your power. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, discovered this truth in the most horrific circumstances imaginable. He observed that even in the camps, where external conditions were unimaginably brutal and beyond anyone's control, some prisoners maintained their dignity, their humanity, their inner freedom. He wrote that everything can be taken from a person except one thing, the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. This is the foundation of the warrior mindset. You may not control what happens to you, but you absolutely control what happens within you. Someone may insult you, but they cannot make you feel insulted without your participation. A situation may be difficult, but it cannot defeat you unless you accept defeat. Life may deal you an unfair hand, but it cannot determine how you play that hand. Now, I want you to pause for a moment and truly absorb what this means for your life. How many times have you said or thought, "He made me angry," or "That situation made me anxious," or "This person ruined my day"? Each time you use this language, you give away your power. You position yourself as a passive victim of circumstances, buffeted about by external forces beyond your control. The warrior never speaks this way. The warrior says, "I felt anger" when he spoke, acknowledging the emotion while maintaining ownership of the response. The warrior says, "I chose to become anxious about that situation," recognizing that anxiety is a response pattern, not an inevitable outcome. The warrior says, "I allowed that person's behavior to affect my emotional state," taking full responsibility for their inner experience. This shift in language reflects a profound shift in consciousness. It is the difference between being a leaf blown about by the wind and being the oak tree that bends but does not break. It is the difference between reactive living and conscious living. When you take ownership of your responses, you reclaim your power. You become the author of your emotional experience rather than a character in someone else's story. Consider the metaphor of a ship's captain navigating stormy seas. The captain cannot control the wind, the waves, or the weather. But the captain absolutely controls how the ship responds to these conditions. A skilled captain adjusts the sails, changes course, secures cargo, and keeps the crew focused on what they can control. An unskilled captain panics, blames the weather, and allows the ship to be tossed about helplessly. Same storm, different outcomes, because of different responses. You are the captain of your inner ship. External events are the weather. Your emotional resilience is your skill at navigation. The storms will come, this is guaranteed. But whether you arrive safely at your destination depends entirely on how you respond to those storms. Let me be absolutely clear, this is not easy. Your brain has spent years, perhaps decades, running automatic response patterns. When certain triggers appear, your nervous system activates familiar emotional pathways without conscious thought. You have been conditioned by your past experiences, your upbringing, your culture, your trauma, and your triumphs. These patterns run deep, carved into your neural pathways like rivers carved into stone over centuries. But here is the extraordinary truth that neuroscience has revealed in recent decades: your brain is neuroplastic. It can change. It can rewire. It can form new patterns at any age. Every time you consciously choose a different response, every time you observe an emotion without being swept away by it, every time you pause before reacting, you are literally reshaping your brain, creating new neural pathways, weakening old reactive patterns, building new highways of thought and feeling. This is not metaphorical. This is biological fact. Brain imaging studies show that meditation practice, for example, physically changes the structure of the brain, increasing gray matter density in areas associated with emotional regulation and decreasing it in the amygdala. Through conscious practice, you can train your brain to respond differently. You can become someone who naturally remains calm under pressure, who instinctively finds opportunity in crisis, who maintains emotional equilibrium even in turbulent times. But it requires practice, patience, and persistence. The conscious management of your responses to difficulty begins with awareness. You cannot change what you do not notice. The first practice of the warrior is to become a witness to their own internal experience. This means developing the capacity to observe your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations without immediately identifying with them or being swept away by them. Right now, as you listen to these words, I want you to notice what you are experiencing. What emotions are present? What thoughts are arising? What sensations exist in your body? Perhaps there is tension in your shoulders, perhaps your breath is shallow or deep, perhaps there is restlessness or calm. Do not judge these experiences, do not analyze them, simply notice them. Can you feel the difference between experiencing an emotion and observing yourself experiencing an emotion? This subtle shift in perspective is the doorway to emotional mastery. Ancient meditation traditions call this the witness consciousness, the part of you that can observe your experience without being identical to it. Modern psychology calls it metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. Whatever you call it, this capacity is essential for emotional resilience. When you can observe your anger rather than being your anger, when you can notice your fear rather than becoming your fear, you create space for choice. In that space, you can ask powerful questions. Is this emotional response helpful right now? Is it proportional to the actual situation? Is it based on current reality or past conditioning? What would be a more effective response? What would my highest self do in this moment? What would someone I deeply respect do in this situation? These questions interrupt automatic patterns and activate your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for conscious decision-making, rational thought, and impulse control. Let me give you a practical technique you can implement immediately, starting today, starting in the next difficult moment you face. When you notice a strong emotion arising, especially a difficult one like anger, fear, or anxiety, practice what I call the sacred pause. Stop whatever you are doing. Do not speak, do not act, simply stop. Take 3 deep, slow breaths, breathing in for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, and breathing out for 6 counts. This specific breathing pattern activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural calming mechanism, the brake pedal on your stress response. Then, name the emotion you are feeling. Say to yourself, silently or aloud, I am experiencing anger right now, or fear is present in my body, or anxiety is arising. This simple act of labeling emotions has been shown in brain imaging studies to reduce activity in the amygdala, your brain's fear center, and increase activity in the prefrontal cortex. You are literally using language to shift your brain from reactive mode to reflective mode, from emotional hijacking to conscious choice. After naming the emotion, ask yourself these 3 questions. What triggered this emotion? What story am I telling myself about this situation? Is there another way to interpret what happened? Often, you will discover that your emotional intensity is based not on objective reality but on the interpretation your mind instantly created about the situation. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and your mind instantly creates a story. That person is disrespectful and inconsiderate. But what if they are rushing to the hospital? What if they didn't see you? By questioning your interpretation, you create flexibility in your response. This brings us to the foundational pillars of psychological resilience, the core capacities that distinguish those who thrive under pressure from those who collapse. I want to explore 3 essential elements: control, acceptance, and flexibility. These 3 qualities work together like legs of a stool, each one necessary, each one supporting the others, creating a stable foundation for unshakable strength. Control is about recognizing what you can influence and directing your energy there while releasing what lies beyond your influence. The Stoic philosophers, particularly Epictetus, had a practice they called the dichotomy of control, dividing all things into 2 categories: things within your control and things outside your control. What is within your control? Your thoughts, your choices, your responses, your effort, your attitude, your values, your character, how you treat others, what you pay attention to, how you interpret events. What is outside your control? Other people's opinions, the past, the weather, other people's behavior, outcomes, circumstances, how others treat you, the economy, traffic, aging, death. The warrior focuses relentlessly on what they can control and develops deep acceptance of what they cannot. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not just ancient wisdom, modern psychology confirms this principle. Research consistently shows that people with an internal locus of control, those who believe they can influence their lives through their own actions, experience less anxiety, better mental health, and greater life satisfaction than those with an external locus of control, who see themselves as victims of circumstance. This is harder than it sounds because the human mind constantly attempts to control the uncontrollable. You waste precious energy trying to control what others think of you, trying to prevent all possible negative outcomes, trying to make people behave the way you want them to behave, trying to control the uncontrollable flow of life itself. This is the source of immense suffering. Every time you attempt to control something beyond your actual influence, you set yourself up for frustration, anxiety, and disappointment. Acceptance is not resignation or passive submission. It is the clear-eyed recognition of reality as it actually is, not as you wish it to be. The warrior accepts difficult circumstances not because they like them or approve of them, but because denying reality creates additional suffering without changing the reality itself. When you resist what is already true, you create an internal civil war, fighting against facts that cannot be changed by your resistance. Think of acceptance as creating a foundation of solid ground from which you can act effectively. When you are busy arguing with reality, saying this shouldn't be happening or this isn't fair or why me, you are standing on shifting sand, wasting energy that could be used for effective action. Once you accept what is, you can ask the only question that matters: given that this is the reality I face, what is my best move from here? This question moves you from victim consciousness to warrior consciousness, from powerless to powerful, from reactive to proactive. Flexibility is your capacity to adapt, to change strategies, to find alternative paths when your preferred route is blocked, to shift perspectives when your current viewpoint creates suffering. Rigid systems break under pressure. Flexible systems bend and adjust. This applies to your beliefs, your plans, your methods, and your expectations. The warrior holds their values firmly but their strategies lightly. They know that life rarely unfolds according to plan, that unexpected obstacles will appear, that circumstances will shift in ways you cannot predict. In nature, the most resilient ecosystems are not those with the strongest individual organisms but those with the greatest diversity and adaptability. When environmental conditions change dramatically, rigid species go extinct while adaptable species evolve and thrive. Your psychological ecosystem operates the same way. The more flexibility you cultivate, the more strategies you have available, the more perspectives you can adopt, the more resilient you become. Let me offer you a daily practice that builds all three of these pillars simultaneously. Each evening, spend 10 minutes in quiet reflection on your day using this framework. First, identify 3 things that were within your control today and evaluate how you handled them. Did you respond consciously or react automatically? What would you do differently if faced with the same situation tomorrow? Second, identify something that was outside your control that you struggled to accept. Can you practice accepting it now, not liking it, just acknowledging its reality without the additional suffering of resistance? Third, identify a situation where you were flexible or where you could have been more flexible. What alternative approaches might have been available that you did not consider in the moment? This daily practice strengthens your capacity to discern control from lack of control, to accept difficult realities without unnecessary suffering, and to think flexibly about challenges and setbacks. Over time, these become not practices but your natural way of being. You become someone who instinctively focuses energy where it matters, who accepts what cannot be changed without internal resistance, and who adapts smoothly to changing circumstances like water flowing around obstacles in its path. Before we conclude this foundational chapter, I want to acknowledge something important. Building emotional resilience is not about becoming immune to pain or difficulty. It is not about transcending your humanity or becoming some kind of enlightened being who floats above life's challenges. You will still feel hurt when someone you love betrays you. You will still experience grief when you lose someone precious. You will still know disappointment when your efforts fail despite your best intentions. The warrior feels all of this, fully and deeply, without suppression or denial. But the warrior is not destroyed by these experiences. The warrior moves through them with dignity, learns from them with wisdom, and emerges with strength and integrity intact. Your emotions are like weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your consciousness. Some days bring sunshine and gentle breezes, some bring storms and lightning. But the sky itself is never damaged by the weather passing through it. It remains vast, open, and fundamentally unchanged regardless of temporary conditions. As you develop emotional resilience, you learn to identify more with the sky than with the weather, more with your fundamental being than with the temporary emotional states moving through you. This does not mean disconnecting from your feelings. It means recognizing that you are larger than any single feeling, that you contain multitudes, that no emotion, however intense, defines the totality of who you are. This is the foundation upon which we will build everything else. This is where true strength begins. Not in denying your humanity, but in embracing it fully while maintaining your center. Not in avoiding difficulty, but in meeting it with eyes wide open and heart courageous. Not in pretending to be invulnerable, but in knowing that you can be wounded and still remain whole. This is the path of the emotional warrior, and you have taken the first step simply by being here, by listening, by opening yourself to transformation. The journey continues, and with each step, you become stronger, clearer, more unshakable in your core. Chapter 2: Mastering Your Inner State. Now that we have laid the foundation of emotional resilience, understanding what it truly means to be a warrior in your inner world, we must go deeper into the practical mastery of your internal state. This chapter is where philosophy meets practice, where understanding transforms into skill, where knowledge becomes power that you can wield in the crucible of real-life challenges. The title of this chapter is deliberate: Mastering Your Inner State. Not controlling it with an iron fist, not suppressing it with denial, not managing it like some corporate project, but mastering it with the wisdom of someone who understands the nature of emotions, respects their power, and knows how to work with them rather than against them. This distinction is crucial and will determine whether you succeed or fail in building true emotional resilience. Most approaches to emotional intelligence focus on managing emotions, a term that implies emotions are problems to be handled, difficulties to be minimized, threats to be contained. This perspective is fundamentally flawed and will keep you trapped in an adversarial relationship with your own inner experience. The warrior does not manage emotions. The warrior reads them, understands them, and redirects their energy toward purposeful action. Think of emotions as messengers carrying important information about your internal and external environment. Anger tells you that a boundary has been crossed or that an injustice has occurred. Fear alerts you to potential danger and prepares your body for action. Sadness signals loss and creates space for processing grief. Anxiety warns you that something important is at stake and mobilizes your resources. Even emotions we typically label as negative carry valuable intelligence if you know how to decode their messages. The problem arises not from the emotions themselves but from how we typically relate to them. Most people have one of two dysfunctional relationships with their emotions. The first group suppresses them, pushing them down, denying their existence, building walls to keep feelings out. These people pride themselves on being logical, rational, unemotional. They see emotions as weaknesses to be overcome. But emotions that are suppressed do not disappear. They go underground, where they ferment and intensify, eventually erupting in unexpected ways or manifesting as physical symptoms, chronic tension, illness, or sudden explosive outbursts. The second group is overwhelmed by emotions, swept away by every feeling that arises, identifying completely with their emotional states, riding an endless roller coaster of emotional reactivity. These people say, "I am angry" rather than "I feel angry," collapsing their entire identity into a temporary emotional state. They believe their emotions are truth, that feelings are facts, that if they feel something intensely it must be valid and everyone else must accommodate it. The warrior walks a middle path between suppression and overwhelm. The warrior feels emotions fully, honors their presence, extracts their wisdom, and then consciously chooses how to respond. This requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to your emotional experience, a shift from identification to observation, from reaction to response, from being your emotions to having emotions. Let me give you a concrete example of how this works in practice. Imagine someone criticizes your work in front of colleagues. Immediately, you feel heat rising in your chest, tension in your jaw, thoughts racing with defensive arguments and counterattacks. This is anger, and it arrives with lightning speed, triggered automatically by your nervous system before your conscious mind even fully processes what happened. The person who suppresses emotions tightens up, forces a smile, says, "No problem, thanks for the feedback," while inside they are seething. They go home and snap at their family, drink too much, lie awake replaying the scene, but never acknowledge the anger directly. The person who is overwhelmed by emotions snaps back immediately, says something they will regret, damages relationships, or collapses into shame and self-criticism, spiraling into a dark emotional state that lasts for days. The warrior does something entirely different. The warrior notices the anger arising, feels the physical sensations in the body, observes the thoughts forming, and creates a brief pause before responding. In that pause, the warrior asks, "What is this anger telling me?" Perhaps it is signaling that the criticism was unfair or poorly delivered. Perhaps it is revealing an area where you feel insecure and need to build competence. Perhaps it is showing you that you care deeply about your work and want to do it well. The warrior extracts this information, acknowledges the emotion without being controlled by it, and then chooses a response that aligns with their values and serves their long-term interests. This might sound simple in theory, but in practice it requires rewiring deeply ingrained patterns. Your emotional reactions developed over years, shaped by countless experiences, evolutionary programming, childhood conditioning, and learned behaviors. Changing these patterns is like changing the course of a river. It requires consistent effort, strategic intervention, and patience. But it is absolutely possible. The first step is learning to recognize your triggers, those specific situations, words, tones, or circumstances that reliably activate strong emotional responses. Triggers are the switches that turn on your emotional autopilot, sending you into familiar reactive patterns without conscious choice. Some triggers are obvious. You know that certain topics will spark arguments, that particular people push your buttons, that specific situations create anxiety. But many triggers operate below your conscious awareness, activated so quickly that you are reacting before you even realize what happened. Identifying your triggers requires honest self-reflection and careful observation. Over the next week, I want you to keep a trigger journal. Every time you experience a strong emotional reaction, especially one that feels disproportionate to the situation or one that you later regret, write down what happened immediately before the emotion arose. What was said? Who was present? What was the context? What thoughts appeared? What physical sensations did you notice? What did you do in response? After a week of recording, patterns will emerge. You will notice that certain themes repeat themselves. Perhaps you are triggered by feeling disrespected, or by situations where you feel out of control, or by perceived rejection, or by failure, or by uncertainty. These patterns reveal your emotional vulnerabilities, the places where your armor is thin, where past wounds have not fully healed, where you are most reactive and least resilient. Once you identify your triggers, you can begin to work with them consciously. This does not mean avoiding them entirely, although there may be some toxic situations or people you wisely choose to limit or remove from your life. Rather, it means preparing for them, creating a conscious response plan so that when the trigger appears, you have already decided how you want to respond rather than letting autopilot take over. Let me teach you a powerful technique for disabling emotional autopilot called the interrupt pattern. When you notice a trigger activating, when you feel that familiar emotional surge beginning, immediately do something unexpected that breaks the pattern. Some people squeeze ice cubes in their hands, the intense physical sensation overriding the emotional reaction. Others use a verbal interrupt, saying a specific word or phrase to themselves that serves as a circuit breaker. One warrior I trained would snap a rubber band on his wrist whenever he felt anger rising, the small sting pulling him back into conscious awareness. The specific interrupt matters less than the fact that you are intervening in an automatic process, inserting consciousness into a space that was previously unconscious. Each time you successfully interrupt a reactive pattern, you weaken that neural pathway and strengthen your capacity for conscious choice. Over time, the old patterns lose their automatic power, and you gain genuine freedom in how you respond to difficult situations. But recognition and interruption are only the beginning. True mastery requires learning to work with the physical energy of emotions, particularly intense ones like anger, fear, and anxiety. Emotions are not just mental events. They are full-body experiences involving hormones, neurotransmitters, cardiovascular changes, muscular tension, and altered breathing patterns. When strong emotions arise, your body floods with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid, your muscles tense for action. This is where the ancient practice of breath control becomes not just a meditation technique but a practical tool for emotional mastery. Your breath is the only part of your autonomic nervous system that you can consciously control, and it serves as a direct line to your emotional state. Change your breathing pattern, and you change your emotional state. This is not metaphorical. This is physiological fact. Let me teach you the warrior's breath, a specific breathing technique that you can use anytime, anywhere to shift from a reactive emotional state to a centered, powerful state of calm alertness. This technique has roots in ancient warrior traditions, from the samurai of Japan to the warriors of Sparta, and modern research has confirmed its effectiveness in regulating the nervous system. Here is how you practice the warrior's breath. Sit or stand with your spine straight, shoulders relaxed. Place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Begin by exhaling completely through your mouth, emptying your lungs fully. Then close your mouth and breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4, feeling your belly expand while your chest remains relatively still. This is diaphragmatic breathing, the deep breathing of a calm, centered state. Hold the breath for a count of 4. Then exhale slowly through your nose for a count of 6, feeling your belly contract. Hold empty for a count of 2. Then repeat this cycle. The key ratios here are deliberate. The exhale is longer than the inhale because extended exhalation activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural calming response. The holds create a rhythm that gives your mind something to focus on, interrupting the spiral of reactive thoughts. Practice this breathing pattern for 5 minutes every morning as part of your daily training. Then, when you face a trigger situation or feel strong emotions arising, you can immediately shift into this breathing pattern, and your body will respond by moving from stress response to calm response. I have seen this simple technique transform people's lives. A business executive who used to explode in anger during high-pressure meetings learned to use the warrior's breath whenever he felt tension rising. Within weeks, his colleagues noticed a dramatic change in his demeanor. A woman with severe anxiety attacks used this breathing pattern whenever she felt panic beginning, and gradually the attacks decreased in frequency and intensity. A combat veteran struggling with hypervigilance and emotional reactivity found that daily practice of this breathing created a baseline of calm he had not experienced since before deployment. The breath is your anchor, your tool, your pathway back to center. But breathing alone is not enough for complete mastery. You must also learn to work with your thoughts, because your thoughts are the narrative structure that interprets and amplifies your emotions. The same event can create entirely different emotional responses depending on how you think about it, what story you tell yourself about what it means. This brings us to mental discipline, the warrior's practice of aligning thoughts with truth, purpose, and power rather than allowing thoughts to run wild, creating unnecessary suffering through distortion, exaggeration, and catastrophizing. Your mind is an incredible tool, capable of solving complex problems, creating beauty, understanding nuance, and generating meaning. But left undisciplined, your mind becomes a source of suffering, generating endless worry, self-criticism, rumination, and negative fantasy. Most people believe they are their thoughts, that the voice in their head is who they are. This is a profound misunderstanding that keeps you trapped in suffering. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes thoughts. Thoughts arise in consciousness like clouds appearing in the sky. Some thoughts are useful, some are true, some are beautiful. But many thoughts are simply noise, mental habits, repetitive patterns that serve no purpose except to create agitation. The practice of mental discipline begins with recognizing that you do not have to believe every thought that appears in your mind. Just because you think something does not make it true. Just because a thought is loud or repetitive or emotional does not grant it authority. You can observe a thought, evaluate its usefulness and accuracy, and consciously choose whether to engage with it or let it pass. Here is a powerful mental discipline exercise you can practice daily: thought labeling. Set a timer for 10 minutes and sit quietly with eyes closed. Simply observe your thoughts as they arise. Do not try to stop them or control them. But as each thought appears, mentally label it with a simple category: planning, remembering, worrying, judging, fantasizing, analyzing, criticizing. Just notice the thought, label it, and let it pass without following it down the rabbit hole. When you realize you have gotten lost in a thought, simply return to observing and labeling. This practice creates metacognitive awareness, the ability to observe your thinking process rather than being lost in it. Over time, you begin to recognize patterns. Perhaps you notice that your mind spends hours in worry, creating elaborate scenarios of things going wrong that rarely actually happen. Perhaps you notice harsh self-criticism that you would never direct at another person. Perhaps you notice how much time you spend replaying past events that cannot be changed. This awareness is liberating because once you see these patterns clearly, they lose their automatic power over you. The next level of mental discipline is learning to align your thoughts with truth and purpose. This means actively questioning thoughts that create suffering and replacing them with more accurate, more useful perspectives. Cognitive psychology calls this cognitive restructuring, and it is one of the most effective tools for emotional resilience. When you notice a thought that triggers strong negative emotion, ask yourself 3 questions. Is this thought true? Can I absolutely know it is true? What would be a more accurate way to think about this situation? For example, if you make a mistake at work and think, I am such a failure, I always mess everything up, question this thought. Is it true that you always mess everything up? Of course not. You have had many successes. Is it true that one mistake makes you a failure? No, it makes you human. A more accurate thought might be, I made a mistake on this project. I will learn from it and do better next time. This is not positive thinking or self-deception. It is accuracy training, learning to see reality clearly rather than through the distorted lens of anxiety, depression, or harsh self-judgment. Your thoughts create your emotional reality, so thinking accurately is not just an intellectual exercise. It is a foundational practice of emotional mastery. Let me teach you another mental discipline exercise called the evening review. Each night before sleep, spend 5 minutes reviewing your day with complete honesty. Identify 3 moments when your thoughts created unnecessary suffering. Perhaps you catastrophized about a situation that turned out fine. Perhaps you personalized something that had nothing to do with you. Perhaps you engaged in comparison that left you feeling inadequate. For each example, write down what happened, what you thought, how it made you feel, and what a more accurate thought would have been. Over time, this practice rewires your thinking patterns, making accurate, resilient thinking more automatic. Now we come to perhaps the most important skill of emotional mastery: remaining centered during moments of emotional intensity. Everything we have discussed so far prepares you for this moment, the moment when life strikes hard, when emotions surge like a tidal wave, when every instinct screams at you to react. This is where warriors are forged, in the fire of intensity, in the pressure of the moment. Remaining centered does not mean remaining calm in the superficial sense of appearing unaffected. It means maintaining connection to your core self, to your values, to your conscious awareness even while experiencing intense emotion. Think of a spinning top. The faster it spins, the more stable it becomes, remaining upright and centered even as tremendous force moves through it. When it stops spinning, it falls over. The warrior is like this spinning top, maintaining dynamic balance through movement rather than through rigid stillness. Here is a practical technique for remaining centered during emotional intensity: the 3-point anchor. When you feel overwhelming emotion rising, immediately ground yourself by focusing attention on 3 physical sensations simultaneously. First, feel your feet on the ground or your seat on the chair, the solid contact between your body and the earth. Second, feel your breath moving in and out, the rise and fall of your belly. Third, feel your hands, perhaps pressing your palms together or touching your fingertips. By anchoring your attention in 3 physical sensations at once, you pull yourself out of the emotional whirlwind in your mind and into the present moment in your body. Practice this technique right now as you listen. Feel your feet. Feel your breath. Feel your hands. Notice how your attention shifts from thoughts to sensations, from abstract to concrete, from overwhelmed to present. This is your emergency anchor, available anytime, anywhere, requiring nothing external. In moments of rage, grief, terror, or despair, these 3 points of physical sensation can be your lifeline back to center. Another powerful technique for emotional intensity is what I call the warrior's pause, different from the brief sacred pause we discussed earlier. When emotions are at their peak and you feel on the verge of a reaction you will regret, give yourself permission to take a longer break. Say, "I need 10 minutes," and physically remove yourself from the situation if possible. Go to another room, step outside, close your eyes wherever you are. During these 10 minutes, practice the warrior's breath, use the 3-point anchor, and ask yourself, what do I value most? How do I want to show up? What would my best self do? What will I think about this moment tomorrow? These questions reconnect you with your deeper wisdom, pulling you out of reactive emotional states and into reflective conscious choice. Yes, sometimes you cannot leave a situation. You are in a meeting, in a conversation, in a moment that demands immediate response. Even then, you can create an internal pause, a brief moment where you breathe, center, and choose. That moment, however brief, is where your power resides. The path of the emotional warrior is not about never feeling intense emotions. It is about feeling them fully without losing yourself in them, about maintaining your center in the storm, about responding from wisdom rather than reacting from conditioning. Every time you successfully navigate emotional intensity with consciousness and grace, you become stronger. Every time you choose your response rather than defaulting to automatic reaction, you carve a deeper groove of resilience into your character. Every time you stay connected to your values in difficult moments, you become more truly yourself. This is mastery of your inner state, not control through force, but mastery through understanding, skill, and practice. You are learning to read the language of your emotions, to work with their energy rather than against it, to recognize and interrupt old patterns, to use your breath as a tool of transformation, to discipline your thinking toward truth and usefulness, and to remain centered when life tests you most severely. These are the skills that separate those who are tossed about by life's storms from those who navigate them with dignity and power. Practice them daily, and you will discover reserves of strength you did not know you possessed. Chapter 3: The Warrior's Mental Strength Principles. Welcome back, warrior. If you've made it this far in your journey, you've already begun something profound. You've acknowledged that emotional resilience isn't a gift bestowed upon the lucky few. It's a discipline, a practice, a way of life that must be cultivated with the same dedication a master craftsman brings to their art. Today, we dive deeper into the mental architecture of warriors, those individuals throughout history who have faced impossible odds and emerged not just intact, but transformed. The warrior mindset isn't about aggression or dominance. It's about clarity in chaos, simplicity in complexity, and unwavering determination when everything around you screams for you to quit. It's about becoming emotionally unshakable, not through suppression, but through understanding, training, and integration. This chapter will provide you with the mental models, practices, and psychological frameworks that separate those who crumble under pressure from those who thrive within it. The 3 pillars of warrior mental models. Let's begin with the foundational architecture of warrior thinking. Throughout centuries, from the Spartan hoplites to the samurai of feudal Japan, from the Stoic philosophers to modern special forces operators, certain mental patterns emerge consistently. These aren't cultural artifacts. They're psychological truths that transcend time and geography. The warrior mind operates on 3 essential pillars: clarity, simplicity, and determination. Clarity is the warrior's first weapon. In the fog of emotional turmoil, when anxiety clouds judgment and fear distorts perception, clarity cuts through like a blade. But what is clarity, really? It's not just seeing things as they are. It's the ability to distinguish signal from noise, essential from trivial, actionable from unchangeable. Neuroscience reveals that under stress, our prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational decision-making, becomes compromised while the amygdala, our emotional alarm system, takes over. The warrior trains specifically to maintain prefrontal function even when the amygdala is screaming. Consider this practical example. You receive devastating news. A project fails. A relationship ends. A diagnosis arrives. In that moment, your mind floods with 1,000 thoughts, fears, and what-ifs. The untrained mind spirals. The warrior mind pauses. It asks 3 clarifying questions. What exactly has happened? What can I control right now? What is the next right action? These questions aren't cold or unfeeling. They're tools of emotional survival. They create mental space between stimulus and response, that sacred gap where freedom lives. Here's your first practical exercise for building clarity. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Think of a current challenge causing you stress. Now, write down every thought and feeling about it without filter. Let it pour out. When the timer stops, read what you've written. Circle only the facts, the objective realities. Cross out interpretations, predictions, and judgments. What remains? That's clarity. That's what you actually know. Practice this daily. You're training your mind to separate reality from the stories you tell about reality. The second pillar is simplicity. Warriors throughout history have understood a profound truth: complexity is the enemy of execution. When your life is on the line, you don't have time for elaborate plans or nuanced philosophies. You need simple, repeatable principles that work under pressure. The Spartans had a simple code: never retreat, never surrender, stand with your brothers. Simple doesn't mean easy. It means clear. It means memorable. It means actionable when your cognitive resources are depleted. In our modern world, we're drowning in complexity. We have 15-step morning routines, complicated productivity systems, and elaborate self-improvement frameworks. Then crisis hits, and all that complexity collapses. The warrior approach is different. Identify your core principles, the non-negotiables that define who you are. For a warrior, this might be: I face my fears. I honor my commitments. I grow through adversity. These aren't just affirmations. They're decision-making heuristics. When facing a choice, you simply ask, which option aligns with my core principles? Research in decision science supports this approach. Studies show that people with clear, simple value systems make faster, more consistent decisions and experience less decision fatigue. More importantly, they report higher life satisfaction because their actions align with their identity. The warrior doesn't waste mental energy deliberating every choice. The path is clear because the principles are simple. Your exercise for building simplicity: write down 3 core principles that define your warrior identity. Not what you wish you believed, but what you're genuinely willing to defend and embody, even when it's hard. Post them somewhere visible. For the next week, before making any significant decision, consciously check whether your options align with these principles. Notice how this simplicity creates confidence and eliminates anxiety. The third pillar is determination. But let's be precise about what determination means in the warrior context. It's not blind stubbornness or refusing to adapt. True determination is the capacity to maintain forward momentum regardless of obstacles, setbacks, or emotional states. It's the understanding that progress isn't linear, that failure is information, and that the only true defeat is abandonment of purpose. Psychologists studying resilience have identified something called grit, defined as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. Research by Angela Duckworth reveals that grit is a stronger predictor of success than talent, intelligence, or resources. Warriors instinctively understand this. They're not necessarily more talented. They're more determined. They've trained themselves to continue when continuation seems impossible. But here's the deeper truth about warrior determination. It's not fueled by willpower alone. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes. The warrior's determination comes from something deeper, a sense of mission that transcends personal comfort. When your why is strong enough, the how becomes manageable. Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, observed that those who found meaning in their suffering had dramatically higher survival rates. The warrior doesn't fight just to fight. The warrior fights for something larger than temporary discomfort. Let's make this practical. Think about a goal you've abandoned or an area where your determination has wavered. Now ask yourself, what was my true purpose here? Not the surface goal, but the deeper why. Often, we set goals based on external expectations or shallow desires. These don't sustain determination. But when you connect to a deeper purpose, to values and meaning that resonate with your core identity, determination becomes natural. Your exercise: identify one area where you need greater determination. Spend time journaling on the question, why does this genuinely matter to me? How does success here serve my larger mission? Let that clarity fuel your next steps. Expanding the comfort zone through micro battles. Now we move from mental models to practical training. The warrior doesn't build strength through isolated heroic acts. Strength is built daily, through small battles against comfort and complacency. Neuroscience tells us something fascinating about fear and comfort zones. Your brain is wired to minimize energy expenditure and avoid threats. This was adaptive when threats were predators and food was scarce. Today, the same wiring keeps you trapped in patterns that limit growth. Every time you avoid discomfort, you send a signal to your brain. This is dangerous, stay away. Every time you voluntarily engage with discomfort, you send a different signal: this is challenging but safe, we can handle this. Over time, your nervous system recalibrates. What once triggered anxiety becomes neutral. Your comfort zone expands not through one dramatic act, but through countless small victories. This is the concept of micro battles, small, daily confrontations with discomfort that systematically desensitize your fear response and build emotional resilience. The beauty of micro battles is their accessibility. You don't need dramatic circumstances. You need awareness and commitment. Let me give you concrete examples that you can implement immediately. Start with physical micro battles. Take cold showers. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because you're training your mind to override the primal desire for comfort. When that cold water hits, your body screams in protest. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your mind offers 1,000 rationalizations to stop. This is the training ground. Breathe deeply, relax your shoulders, stay present. You're teaching your nervous system that discomfort doesn't equal danger. Research on cold exposure shows it significantly increases stress tolerance and improves mood regulation through increased norepinephrine and endorphins. Social micro-battles are equally powerful. If you fear rejection, commit to one small act of social risk daily. Start a conversation with a stranger. Share an opinion that might be unpopular. Ask for what you want directly. Each time you do this, you're confronting the ancient tribal fear of social exclusion. Each time you survive, and you will, your brain learns that social risk is manageable. Studies on exposure therapy, the gold standard treatment for anxiety, work precisely on this principle. Graduated exposure to feared situations systematically reduces fear response. Mental micro-battles involve confronting difficult thoughts and emotions rather than avoiding them. When anxiety arises, instead of distracting yourself, set a timer for 5 minutes and simply observe the sensation. Where do you feel it in your body? What thoughts accompany it? Watch it without judgment, like a scientist observing a phenomenon. You'll discover something remarkable: emotions are temporary and survivable. They peak, plateau, and subside. By repeatedly sitting with discomfort, you prove to yourself that you can handle what you've been avoiding. Here's a structured approach to implementing micro-battles. Choose 3 domains: physical, social, and mental. In each domain, identify one small uncomfortable action you can take daily. It should be challenging but achievable. Commit to 30 days. Track your progress. Notice not just external results, but internal shifts. Do things that used to terrify you now feel manageable? That's your comfort zone expanding. That's warrior resilience building. The key principle underlying micro-battles is progressive overload, a concept borrowed from strength training. You gradually increase the stress on the system, allowing for adaptation and recovery. You don't jump into an ice bath for an hour on day 1. You start with 30 seconds of cold water at the end of a warm shower. As your tolerance builds, you increase duration or intensity. This systematic approach prevents overwhelm while ensuring consistent growth. Rituals that build unbreakable mental resilience. Warriors across cultures have understood the power of ritual. Rituals aren't superstition. They're psychological anchors that create consistency, meaning, and mental fortitude. In times of chaos, when everything feels uncertain, rituals provide structure. They're controllable actions in an uncontrollable world. They signal to your mind, no matter what happens externally, this I control. Morning rituals are particularly powerful for setting your mental state. How you begin your day dramatically influences your emotional resilience throughout it. Consider the difference between these two morning approaches. First scenario, alarm screams, you hit snooze multiple times, rush out of bed, check your phone immediately, flood your mind with news and social media, and react to others' priorities before establishing your own. Second scenario. You wake to a gentle alarm at a consistent time, spend 5 minutes in stillness before reaching for devices, engage in a brief physical practice like stretching or breathwork, and consciously set intentions for the day. The first scenario activates stress responses and positions you as reactive. The second builds agency and calm. You're not at the mercy of circumstances. You've established inner stability first. Research on circadian rhythms and cortisol patterns shows that morning routines significantly impact stress hormone regulation throughout the day. A calm, intentional morning literally changes your biochemistry. Let me share a warrior morning ritual you can adapt. Wake at the same time daily, even weekends. This consistency regulates your circadian rhythm and improves sleep quality. Before touching your phone, spend 2 minutes in conscious breathing. Simply observe your breath, following the natural rhythm of inhalation and exhalation. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response, creating physiological calm. Next, engage in 5 minutes of physical movement. This doesn't mean an intense workout. Simple stretching, yoga, or bodyweight exercises signal to your body that you're awake and ready. Physical movement increases blood flow, releases endorphins, and clears mental fog. Follow this with a brief mental exercise, perhaps reviewing your core principles or visualizing successful navigation of today's challenges. Finally, consume something nourishing, hydrating first, then eating mindfully rather than rushing through breakfast. This entire ritual takes perhaps 20 minutes. 20 minutes that transform your entire day. The specific activities matter less than the consistency and intentionality. You're training your mind that you, not circumstances, set the tone. You're building what psychologists call an internal locus of control, the belief that you influence outcomes through your actions. Evening rituals are equally important for processing the day and preparing for restorative sleep. Warriors understand that recovery is as crucial as training. An effective evening ritual might include a brief review of the day, noting challenges faced and lessons learned. This isn't rumination. It's conscious integration, transforming experience into wisdom. Follow this with a transition activity that signals to your body that work is done. Perhaps reading, light stretching, or a conversation with loved ones. The final element is a shutdown ritual for technology. Blue light from screens disrupts melatonin production, undermining sleep quality. More importantly, consuming stimulating content before bed activates your mind when you should be calming it. Set a technology curfew, perhaps 1 hour before sleep. Use that hour for analog activities that genuinely relax you. Your mind will resist at first. Push through. The sleep quality improvement alone justifies this practice. Beyond daily rituals, consider weekly practices that build resilience. Many warriors throughout history engaged in periods of deliberate deprivation or challenge. Fasting, silence retreats, or vision quests serve to test limits and build mental strength. You can modernize this. Once weekly, engage in a longer period of voluntary discomfort. This might be an extended fast, a day of digital detox, or several hours in nature without entertainment. These practices reset your baseline for what's necessary versus luxurious, building gratitude and perspective. Cultivating a growth mindset, transforming obstacles into opportunities. The warrior's relationship with adversity is fundamentally different from the average person's. Where others see insurmountable obstacles, the warrior sees training grounds. This isn't naive optimism. It's a deliberately cultivated mental framework called growth mindset, a concept extensively researched by psychologist Carol Dweck. Understanding and implementing growth mindset principles is perhaps the most powerful tool for building emotional resilience. Fixed mindset believes that abilities, intelligence, and character are static. You either have what it takes or you don't. Challenges reveal your limitations. Failure exposes your inadequacy. This mindset is devastating for resilience because setbacks become evidence of fundamental insufficiency. Growth mindset, in contrast, believes that abilities develop through effort and learning. Challenges are opportunities to expand capacity. Failure is information, feedback for adjustment. This mindset is liberating because nothing is final, everything is in process. Consider how these mindsets interpret the same event differently. You attempt something difficult and fail. Fixed mindset says, I'm not good at this. I lack the talent. Why bother trying? This narrative leads to avoidance and stagnation. Growth mindset says, this didn't work. What can I learn? What would I do differently? What skills need development? This narrative leads to adaptation and improvement through language. The external event is identical. Self-talk, particularly after setbacks. The internal response creates entirely different trajectories. I can't do this. I'm not the kind of person who. I've always been bad at. Replace them with growth mindset alternatives. I can't do this yet. I'm developing the capacity to. I'm learning to improve at. The word yet is particularly powerful. It acknowledges current limitation while implying future possibility. This isn't just semantic games. Neuroscience research using brain imaging shows that growth and fixed mindsets literally activate different neural pathways. Growth mindset individuals show greater activity in areas associated with learning and attention when facing errors, while fixed mindset individuals show activity in emotional regulation areas, suggesting they're managing threat response rather than extracting lessons. Let's make this intensely practical. Think of a recent failure or setback. Write down your initial interpretation, your gut reaction to what happened. Examine it for fixed mindset elements. Now, deliberately reframe it through growth mindset. What did this experience teach you? What capabilities are you developing? What would you do differently with current knowledge? How is this obstacle revealing areas for growth? This exercise isn't about toxic positivity or pretending bad things are good. Some events are genuinely tragic. The warrior acknowledges pain while refusing to be defined by circumstances. Even in profound loss, the question becomes, given this reality I didn't choose, who will I become? How will I grow? Viktor Frankl's entire philosophy of logotherapy emerged from this question in the concentration camps. One powerful growth mindset practice is the obstacle reversal technique. When facing a challenge, instead of asking why is this happening to me, ask what is this teaching me? And how might this be necessary for where I'm going? Often, obstacles that seem purely negative contain seeds of essential development. The job you lost might push you toward work more aligned with your values. The relationship that ended might teach you what you genuinely need. The illness might reconnect you with what truly matters. I'm not suggesting everything happens for a reason in some cosmic sense. I'm saying you can create reasons, extract meaning, and forge growth from anything. That's the warrior's power. You don't control circumstances, but you absolutely control interpretation and response. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that many people who experience severe trauma report positive life changes afterward, including deeper relationships, greater appreciation for life, increased personal strength, and spiritual development. This doesn't minimize the trauma. It highlights human capacity to transmute suffering into growth. Your growth mindset training exercise. For the next 2 weeks, maintain a challenge log. Each evening, note one difficulty you faced. Write 3 things: what happened objectively, what you learned or could learn, and one way you'll apply this lesson going forward. This practice systematically trains your brain to mine challenges for value rather than simply endure them. The psychology of crisis composure. Finally, we arrive at perhaps the most critical warrior skill: maintaining composure in crisis. This is where all previous training converges. Clarity under pressure. Simple principles cutting through chaos. Determination despite impossible odds. Expanded comfort zones making the intolerable tolerable. Rituals providing anchors in storms. Growth mindset transforming disasters into development. Crisis composure isn't a separate skill. It's the integration of everything we've discussed. First, understand the physiology of crisis. When your brain perceives threat, your sympathetic nervous system activates. Heart rate increases. Breathing becomes shallow. Blood flows from digestive and reasoning centers to muscles for fight or flight. Cortisol and adrenaline flood your system. This response evolved to help you escape predators. It's less helpful for modern crises that require clear thinking rather than physical action. The untrained person remains trapped in this state, making reactive decisions from a place of panic. The warrior trains to rapidly shift from sympathetic activation to parasympathetic regulation, from panic to presence. The key is breath. This isn't mystical. It's physiological. Your breath is the only autonomic function you can consciously control, making it the bridge between involuntary stress response and voluntary regulation. Learn this tactical breathing technique used by military special forces. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Breathe out for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Repeat for 5 cycles. This box breathing pattern rapidly activates your parasympathetic nervous system, slowing heart rate and reducing cortisol. Practice this in non-crisis situations until it becomes automatic. Then, when crisis hits, your body knows this pathway to calm. Second, understand the mental phenomenon of catastrophizing. In crisis, our minds project worst-case scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. This cascade of catastrophic thinking intensifies panic and paralyzes action. The warrior interrupts this cascade through a simple question: what do I know for certain right now? Not what might happen, not what I fear, but what is actually true in this moment. This grounds you in reality. Often, the current moment, while difficult, is manageable. It's the projected future disasters that overwhelm. By continually returning to present reality, you maintain the ability to think and act. Mindfulness practice trains exactly this capacity, the ability to remain present rather than lost in mental projections. Studies show that regular mindfulness meditation increases activity in the prefrontal cortex and decreases amygdala reactivity, literally rewiring your brain for crisis composure. Third, recognize that crisis reveals character but doesn't create it. The person you become under extreme pressure is the person you've been training to be in ordinary moments. You don't rise to the occasion. You default to your level of training. This is why daily practice matters so profoundly. The micro-battles, the rituals, the growth mindset exercises, all of these are deposits in an account you'll draw from when crisis comes. Let me share a framework for crisis response that integrates everything. When crisis hits, first, breathe. Use the tactical breathing pattern to regulate your nervous system. Second, assess. What exactly is happening? What is within my control? What requires immediate action? Third, simplify. Given my core principles, what is the next right step? Not the complete solution, just the next action. Fourth, act. Take that step, even if imperfect. Action creates momentum and reduces helplessness. Fifth, adapt. Based on results, adjust and take the next step. This cycle, breathe, assess, simplify, act, adapt, provides structure when everything feels chaotic. Your crisis composure training doesn't happen in crisis. It happens now, in preparation. Visualize potential challenges. Mental rehearsal is proven to activate similar neural pathways as actual experience. Imagine yourself facing difficulties with composure. See yourself breathing, thinking clearly, acting decisively. This mental training builds neural patterns you'll access when needed. Additionally, study your past crises. You've survived every difficult moment up until now. That's data. How did you cope? What worked? What would you do differently? You're building a personal crisis response playbook. When new challenges arise, you're not starting from zero. You have proven strategies and evidence of your capacity to endure. One final truth about crisis composure: it doesn't mean absence of fear or difficulty. The warrior feels fear fully. The warrior acknowledges when situations are terrible. Composure means feeling everything while remaining functional. It means fear doesn't dictate decisions. Pain doesn't prevent action. This is emotional resilience at its peak, not the absence of difficult emotions, but the presence of capacity to function regardless. Integration and commitment. We've covered profound ground together. The warrior mental models of clarity, simplicity, and determination. The practice of expanding comfort zones through daily micro-battles. The power of rituals to build consistency and resilience. The transformation of obstacles through growth mindset. The physiology and psychology of crisis composure. These aren't just concepts. They're training protocols for becoming emotionally unshakable. But information without implementation is entertainment. The question isn't whether these principles are true. The question is whether you'll train them. Starting tomorrow, commit to one practice from each section. One clarity exercise. One daily micro-battle. One ritual. One growth mindset reframe. One breath work session. Just one from each category. That's manageable. That's sustainable. That's how warriors are built, one deliberate practice at a time. Remember, you're not trying to become someone different. You're uncovering the warrior that already exists within you, buried perhaps under layers of conditioning, fear, and avoidance. Every human has this capacity. The warrior isn't a separate category of person. The warrior is what emerges when someone commits to this path of deliberate emotional and mental strengthening. The journey ahead will challenge you. There will be days you want to quit, moments you question whether this matters. In those moments, remember why you started. Remember that emotional resilience isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up, every single time, with lessons learned and determination intact. You're building something profound here, a life where circumstances don't determine your internal state, where challenges refine rather than break you, where you face whatever comes with the composure of someone who has trained for exactly this. You are becoming unshakable. Not through denial of difficulty, but through deliberate cultivation of capacity. This is the warrior's path. This is your path. Now, let's walk it together, one practice, one day, one choice at a time. Your training begins now. Chapter 4: Overcoming Challenges with Emotional Control. Welcome back, warrior. You've trained your mind, expanded your comfort zones, and built the foundation of mental resilience. Now we face the real test: applying emotional control in the chaos of daily life. Because theory without practice is merely philosophy. True mastery emerges when you can maintain composure while life throws everything at you, when criticism stings, when failure looms, when uncertainty clouds every path forward. This chapter is about emotional flexibility, the capacity to bend without breaking, to feel deeply without being controlled by those feelings. We'll explore how to remain powerful when facing the three great destroyers of inner peace: criticism, failure, and uncertainty. You'll learn rapid recovery techniques that transform emotional setbacks from devastating blows into minor inconveniences. Most importantly, you'll discover how to prevent emotional exhaustion before it begins, and how to cultivate the mental silence that allows true emotional centering. The dance of emotional flexibility in daily life. Let's begin with a fundamental truth that most people miss: emotional control isn't about suppression. It's about flexibility. Think of a mighty oak tree and a bamboo stalk in a storm. The rigid oak may snap under extreme wind, but the flexible bamboo bends and survives. Your emotions are the storm. Your response determines whether you break or bend. Emotional flexibility means experiencing the full range of human feeling while maintaining functional agency. You feel anger without becoming destructive. You experience sadness without collapsing into despair. You notice fear without letting it dictate decisions. This is the warrior's emotional mastery, not the absence of emotion, but the presence of choice in how you respond. Research in emotional intelligence reveals something profound. People with high emotional flexibility have better relationships, perform better under stress, and report greater life satisfaction. Why? Because they've developed what psychologists call emotion regulation skills, the capacity to influence which emotions they have, when they have them, and how they experience and express them. Let me show you how this works in daily life. Imagine your morning commute. Traffic is terrible. Someone cuts you off. Your immediate emotional response is anger, a flash of rage at the injustice and disrespect. This is automatic, hardwired into your nervous system. The untrained person remains in this anger, perhaps honking, cursing, letting it poison the next hour. The warrior with emotional flexibility notices the anger, feels it fully for perhaps 10 seconds, then consciously chooses, "This emotion isn't serving me. I release it." This isn't denial. You genuinely felt angry. But you didn't become anger. There's a crucial difference. When you are your emotion, it controls you. When you have an emotion, you maintain agency. This distinction is everything. Buddhist psychology teaches that emotions are like weather passing through the sky of your consciousness. You are the sky, not the weather. The clouds come and go. Your essential nature remains unchanged. Here's your first practice for building emotional flexibility. Throughout today, whenever you notice a strong emotion arising, pause and label it. Simply say internally, "I'm noticing anger. I'm experiencing anxiety. I'm feeling joy." This simple act of labeling creates psychological distance. Neuroscience research shows that affect labeling, putting feelings into words, reduces activity in the amygdala and increases activity in the prefrontal cortex. You're literally shifting from emotional reactivity to conscious awareness. The second element of daily emotional flexibility is response selection. Once you've noticed and labeled an emotion, you choose how to respond. Not whether to feel it, that's already happening, but what to do with it. You have options. Express it, examine it, redirect it, or release it. Each option is appropriate in different contexts. Expressing anger at injustice can fuel positive change. Examining sadness can reveal unmet needs. Redirecting anxiety into preparation can enhance performance. Releasing resentment prevents it from poisoning your peace. The key is recognizing that you have these options. Most people live as if emotions automatically dictate behavior. You feel angry, so you lash out. You feel anxious, so you avoid. You feel sad, so you withdraw. This is emotional slavery. The warrior recognizes emotions as information and invitations, not commands. Your anger might be signaling a boundary violation. That's useful information. But whether you respond with aggression, assertion, or strategic patience is your choice. Let's make this intensely practical with a daily emotional flexibility routine. Each evening, reflect on one emotionally charged moment from your day. Write down what happened, what emotion arose, how you responded, and how you might respond differently now with conscious awareness. This isn't about self-judgment. It's about training. Athletes review game footage to improve performance. You're reviewing emotional footage to increase flexibility. Over time, this practice rewires your automatic responses. Situations that once triggered instant reactivity now create a pause, a space where choice lives. This space is freedom. This space is power. This is where warriors operate, not in the absence of emotional storms, but in the mastery of navigating them. Standing strong against criticism, failure, and uncertainty. Now we face the three dragons that destroy most people's emotional equilibrium: criticism, failure, and uncertainty. These aren't abstract concepts. They're daily realities that test your warrior resolve. Let's develop specific strategies for each. Criticism arrives in many forms. A harsh review at work. A partner's complaint about your behavior. A stranger's comment online. Social media's endless judgment. Your own internal critic, often the harshest of all. The untrained mind personalizes criticism, takes it as evidence of fundamental inadequacy, and either collapses into shame or hardens into defensive anger. The warrior does something different. First, the warrior separates person from behavior. When someone criticizes your work, they're not attacking your worth as a human being. They're providing feedback about specific actions or outputs. This distinction is crucial. If you are your work, then criticism of your work feels like an existential threat. But you are not your work. You are the conscious being who created that work and can create differently next time. Second, the warrior evaluates criticism for truth. Not all criticism is valid. Some comes from projection, jealousy, or misunderstanding. But some contains genuine insight. The warrior asks, "Is there truth here? What can I learn?" This transforms criticism from attack into information. Even unfair criticism teaches you something, perhaps about the critic's values, perhaps about how others perceive you, perhaps about areas where communication clarity is needed. Here's a powerful practice for handling criticism. When you receive critical feedback, especially harsh criticism, implement the 24-hour rule. Don't respond immediately. Your initial reaction is likely defensive, driven by ego protection rather than wisdom. Instead, sit with the feedback. Write down any elements that feel true or useful. Write down your emotional response. Sleep on it. After 24 hours, you can respond from a place of composure rather than reactivity. Research on emotional regulation supports this approach. Studies show that time creates emotional distance, allowing the prefrontal cortex to reassert control over the amygdala's threat response. The criticism that felt devastating yesterday often feels manageable today, not because it changed, but because you've processed the initial emotional impact. Now let's address failure, perhaps the most powerful teacher if you're willing to learn. Failure devastates those who see it as final judgment. Failure strengthens those who see it as feedback. The difference is entirely in interpretation. Thomas Edison famously said he didn't fail 10,000 times in creating the light bulb. He found 10,000 ways that didn't work. This isn't semantic wordplay. It's a fundamental reorienting of your relationship with failure. The warrior understands that failure is unavoidable for anyone attempting anything worthwhile. If you're not failing, you're not pushing boundaries. You're staying safely within your current capacity. Research on expertise across domains, from sports to music to business, consistently shows that top performers fail more than average performers. Not because they're less capable, but because they attempt more difficult challenges. Your task is to build a healthy relationship with failure. Start by examining your failure narrative. When something doesn't work, what story do you tell yourself? Is it, "I'm inadequate, I'll never succeed, why do I even try?" Or is it, "This approach didn't work, what did I learn, what will I try next?" The external event is identical. The internal narrative creates completely different futures. Here's your failure integration practice. Create a failure log, yes, seriously. Each time you fail at something, record it. Note what you attempted, what happened, what you learned, and what you'll do differently. Review this log monthly. You'll notice patterns. You'll see growth. Most importantly, you'll accumulate evidence that failure isn't fatal. You've failed countless times and you're still here, still growing, still trying. That's the warrior spirit. Finally, uncertainty, the invisible dragon that underlies most anxiety. Humans crave certainty. We want to know outcomes before taking action. We want guarantees before committing. We want to eliminate all risk before proceeding. This is impossible. Life is inherently uncertain. The warrior makes peace with this reality rather than fighting it. The psychological root of anxiety around uncertainty is the illusion of control. We believe we should be able to predict and control outcomes. When we can't, we feel threatened. But consider this: you've never had complete certainty about anything. Every decision you've ever made involved uncertainty. Every step into the future is taken without guarantees. And yet, you've navigated it all. You've handled every uncertain moment up until now. Building uncertainty tolerance starts with small experiments. Practice making decisions without complete information. Start with low-stakes choices. Which restaurant? Which movie? Make the choice quickly, with partial information, and observe what happens. You'll discover something liberating: most decisions are reversible or their consequences are manageable. This frees you from paralysis. For larger uncertainties, practice scenario planning. Instead of trying to predict the one future, imagine multiple possible outcomes. For each scenario, develop a response plan. This reduces anxiety because you're prepared for various possibilities rather than fixated on one uncertain outcome. Military strategists call this operational flexibility. Warriors throughout history have understood that you can't control the battlefield, but you can prepare to respond effectively to whatever emerges. Your uncertainty tolerance practice. Identify one area of your life causing anxiety due to uncertainty. Write down the specific unknowns. Then ask, what do I know? What can I control? What preparations can I make regardless of outcome? This shifts your focus from uncontrollable futures to controllable present actions. This is where your power lives. Rapid recovery techniques for emotional setbacks. Life will knock you down. That's not pessimism. That's reality. The question isn't whether you'll face emotional setbacks. The question is how quickly you recover. Warriors master rapid recovery, the ability to process difficult emotions and return to functional equilibrium faster than circumstances would suggest possible. The first rapid recovery technique is the physiological reset. Remember, emotions have physical components. When you're emotionally overwhelmed, your body is in a stress state. You can't think your way out of this. You must shift your physiology first. The fastest method is intensive physical movement. 20 jumping jacks. 50 push-ups. A sprint upstairs. This might seem too simple, but it works. Physical exertion metabolizes stress hormones and shifts your nervous system state. Research on embodied cognition shows that your physical state directly influences your emotional and cognitive state. You can't feel exactly the same emotionally after vigorous movement. Your biochemistry has literally changed. This is why pacing, fidgeting, or shaking out your body during stress feels instinctively right. Your body is trying to process the activation. The second technique is radical acceptance, a concept from dialectical behavior therapy. When something painful happens, your mind often adds suffering by resisting reality. This happened. I hate that this happened. This shouldn't have happened. Why did this happen to me? This resistance is like holding your hand on a hot stove while complaining that it's hot. The initial pain is bad enough. Your resistance makes it worse. Radical acceptance means fully acknowledging reality without judgment or resistance. This happened. I don't like it, but it happened. Fighting with reality doesn't change reality. It only exhausts you. When you stop resisting what already is, you free up enormous energy for actually dealing with the situation. This isn't resignation. It's clear-eyed acknowledgement that allows effective response. Practice this. When something difficult happens, say aloud or write, "This is what's happening right now. I accept this reality." This doesn't mean you like it or agree with it. It means you're not wasting energy denying or resisting what already exists. From acceptance, you can ask, given this reality, what's my best response? The third rapid recovery technique is perspective shifting through the zoom out method. When you're emotionally overwhelmed, your perception narrows. This problem feels all-encompassing, permanent, and definitive. The zoom out method deliberately expands your perspective. Ask yourself, will this matter in a week? A month? A year? 5 years? This isn't about minimizing genuine difficulties. It's about right-sizing your emotional response. Often, what feels catastrophic today will be barely remembered next month. Recognizing this doesn't eliminate current pain, but it prevents you from making that pain worse through catastrophic thinking. You're creating temporal perspective. Yes, this is hard now. And yes, I will get through this, as I've gotten through everything else. Combine this with spatial perspective. Imagine viewing your situation from outside yourself, like watching a movie of your life. What would you advise this character? Often, we extend more compassion and wisdom to others than to ourselves. This external perspective can unlock that wisdom for your own situation. Your rapid recovery protocol: when emotionally knocked down, first reset your physiology with movement. Second, practice radical acceptance of what is. Third, zoom out for perspective. Finally, take one small action forward, even if imperfect. These 4 steps: move, accept, zoom out, act, create a pathway from emotional overwhelm back to functional equilibrium in minutes rather than hours or days. Preventing emotional exhaustion through strategic habits. Prevention is more powerful than recovery. The warrior doesn't just manage emotional crises. The warrior prevents many of them through strategic daily habits. Emotional exhaustion, that deep fatigue where everything feels overwhelming and you have no reserves left, results from chronic stress without adequate recovery. Let's build habits that prevent this state. First, understand your energy cycles. You have physical energy, mental energy, and emotional energy. These aren't infinite. They deplete through use and replenish through rest. Most people ignore emotional energy until it's completely depleted. The warrior tracks and manages it proactively. Start monitoring what drains your emotional energy and what replenishes it. Drains might include certain people, specific tasks, overstimulation, or suppressing your authentic feelings. Replenishers might include time in nature, creative expression, deep conversations, or solitude. There's no universal list. You must discover your personal energy dynamics. Your practice: for 1 week, rate your emotional energy level 3 times daily on a scale of 1 to 10. Note what activities preceded each rating. Patterns will emerge. Once you know your drains and replenishers, you can structure your life more intentionally. If possible, minimize drains and maximize replenishers. Where drains are unavoidable, schedule replenishers immediately after. The second prevention habit is strategic disconnection. We live in an age of constant connectivity. Your phone buzzes with notifications. Emails arrive endlessly. News cycles churn with crisis. Social media demands attention. This chronic stimulation prevents the mental downtime necessary for emotional recovery. Your nervous system never fully relaxes. Over time, this creates exhaustion. Implement digital boundaries. Designate device-free times, perhaps the first hour after waking and the last hour before sleep. Create notification-free periods during your day, blocks where you're unreachable except for true emergencies. Initially, this will feel uncomfortable. Your mind is habituated to constant stimulation. Push through. The mental clarity and emotional restoration that emerge from regular disconnection are profound. Research on attention and stress shows that constant task switching and information processing significantly elevate cortisol levels. Your brain interprets this constant stimulation as ongoing threat, maintaining a chronic low-level stress state. Strategic disconnection allows your nervous system to return to baseline, preventing the accumulation of stress that leads to exhaustion. The third prevention habit is preemptive emotional processing. Don't wait until emotions overflow. Create regular times for emotional check-ins. Perhaps a weekly session where you sit with a journal and ask, "What have I been feeling this week? What emotions am I avoiding? What needs attention?" This prevents emotional backlog, the accumulation of unprocessed feelings that eventually erupts. Many people operate like a pressure cooker with no release valve. They suppress emotions continuously until something minor triggers a massive explosion. The warrior opens the valve regularly through conscious emotional processing. This isn't wallowing. It's maintenance. Just as you brush your teeth daily to prevent decay, you process emotions regularly to prevent overwhelm. Your emotional processing practice can be simple. Set aside 15 minutes weekly. Sit quietly without devices. Review your week emotionally rather than just logistically. Let feelings surface without judgment. You might write about them, speak them aloud, or simply acknowledge them internally. The method matters less than the consistency. The fourth prevention habit is maintaining clear boundaries. Much emotional exhaustion comes from taking on others' emotions, problems, and demands. Empathy is valuable. Emotional enmeshment is destructive. You can care about someone's struggles without carrying them. You can support someone without sacrificing your own well-being. Learn to distinguish between your feelings and others' feelings. When someone shares their distress, you might feel compassion, but their distress isn't yours to fix or carry. This isn't coldness. It's emotional clarity. Clear boundaries allow you to show up fully for others without depleting yourself. The warrior helps from overflow, not from emptiness. Practice saying no without guilt or excessive explanation. No is a complete sentence. You don't need elaborate justifications for protecting your energy. When you habitually overextend yourself to avoid disappointing others, you guarantee disappointing yourself. This builds resentment and exhaustion. Boundaries prevent this. Cultivating mental silence and emotional centering. Finally, we arrive at the foundation beneath all emotional control. The capacity for mental silence and emotional centering. This isn't another technique to add to your list. This is the ground from which all techniques emerge. Without this, you're managing symptoms. With this, you're addressing root causes. Mental silence doesn't mean stopping all thoughts. That's impossible and unnecessary. It means creating space between thoughts, moments of pure awareness without mental narration. In these spaces, you touch something deeper than emotional reactivity. You connect with the awareness that witnesses all emotions but is moved by none. The primary practice for cultivating mental silence is meditation, but let's be specific. You're not trying to achieve some mystical state. You're training attention. When your mind wanders, and it will constantly at first, you gently return attention to your chosen focus. This return, repeated thousands of times, is the training. You're building the mental muscle that creates space between stimulus and response. Start with just 5 minutes daily. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Focus on your breath, not changing it, just observing it. When thoughts arise, notice them without judgment and return to breath. That's it. This simple practice, done consistently, creates profound shifts. Research shows that 8 weeks of daily meditation measurably increases gray matter in brain regions associated with emotional regulation and decreases activity in the amygdala. But meditation isn't the only path to mental silence. Any activity that fully absorbs your attention creates similar states. Intense physical exercise. Creative flow. Deep conversation. Time in nature. The key characteristic is present moment awareness without self-referential thinking. You're not thinking about yourself or your problems. You're simply here, now, engaged. Your mental silence practice: identify one activity that naturally quiets your mind. Commit to it 3 times weekly. Notice how you feel before and after. You're creating islands of silence in the noise of daily life. Over time, these islands expand. You carry more silence with you into activity. This silence is your foundation, the still center from which you respond rather than react. Emotional centering goes hand in hand with mental silence. Centering means returning to your essential self beneath roles, identities, and circumstances. Who are you when you strip away job titles, relationships, achievements, and failures? There's a core self, a witnessing awareness that existed before your current problems and will exist after they resolve. Connecting with this core creates unshakable stability. A powerful centering practice is the inner anchor technique. Identify a phrase, image, or sensation that represents your essential self. This might be a core value, a memory of strength, or simply the feeling of your breath. In moments of emotional turbulence, return to this anchor. Place your hand on your heart. Take 3 deep breaths. Repeat your centering phrase. You're reminding yourself who you are beneath the storm. The warrior understands something profound: you are not your emotions, your thoughts, your circumstances, or your history. You are the awareness experiencing all of these. This isn't philosophical abstraction. It's practical liberation. When you identify with temporary experiences, you're tossed by every wave. When you rest in the awareness beneath experiences, you remain stable while waves pass. Your life will continue presenting challenges. Criticism will come. Failure will happen. Uncertainty will persist. But you now have the tools, practices, and understanding to remain emotionally powerful through it all. Not untouched, but unbroken. Not unfeeling, but uncontrolled by feelings. This is the warrior's emotional mastery. Remember, this isn't about perfection. Some days you'll handle challenges beautifully. Other days you'll fall apart. That's human. The warrior path isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up, learning, and continuing forward. Every setback is training. Every challenge is opportunity. Every moment is a choice to practice or abandon what you know. You're building something remarkable here, a life where emotional storms don't determine your direction, where you feel deeply but respond wisely, where challenges strengthen rather than diminish you. This is possible. This is your path. This is who you're becoming. One practice, one choice, one breath at a time. The warrior's way. Your way. Chapter 5, Becoming Unshakable, Your Resilience Transformation Plan. Welcome to the final chapter of your transformation, warrior. You've learned the principles, practiced the techniques, and built the foundation of emotional resilience. Now we integrate everything into a comprehensive life system, a way of being that makes unshakable strength your default state rather than an occasional achievement. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of your new life as an emotional warrior. This chapter provides your complete transformation roadmap. You'll receive the 7-step emotional warrior routine that structures your daily practice. You'll understand the long-term development model that turns temporary gains into permanent transformation. You'll learn how to design your entire life around resilience rather than treating it as an isolated skill. Most importantly, you'll discover how to lead yourself with the clarity and conviction of a warrior, awakening the unshakable force that has always lived within you. The 7-step emotional warrior routine. Let me give you the daily practice that integrates everything you've learned into one powerful routine. This isn't about adding 7 new tasks to your overwhelmed schedule. This is about replacing scattered reactive living with intentional warrior discipline. Each step takes just minutes but compounds into transformation over weeks and months. Commit to this routine for 90 days. By the end, you won't recognize your former self. Step 1 is the morning anchor, performed immediately upon waking before touching any device. Sit up in bed or move to a quiet space. Place your hand on your heart and take 3 deep breaths. As you breathe, connect with your core intention for the day. Not your to-do list, but your way of being. Today I am calm. Today I am courageous. Today I am compassionate. This takes 90 seconds. These 90 seconds set your internal state before external demands begin their assault. Why does this matter? Research on priming shows that the thoughts and feelings you experience first thing in the morning disproportionately influence your entire day. If you wake and immediately check your phone, flooding your mind with others' priorities, problems, and demands, you begin from a reactive state. The morning anchor establishes proactive intention. You're declaring who you are before circumstances try to define you. Your morning anchor becomes your touchstone throughout the day. When challenges arise, you return to that intention. Am I being calm right now? Am I acting courageously? This creates continuity between morning intention and daily action. Over time, the gap between who you intend to be and who you actually are narrows. This is integrity in its deepest sense, wholeness, alignment between inner values and outer behavior. Step 2 is the physical activation, 5 minutes of movement that shifts your physiology from sleep state to ready state. This doesn't require a gym. Bodyweight exercises in your bedroom work perfectly. 20 push-ups, 30 squats, 40 jumping jacks, a plank hold. The specific exercises matter less than the intensity. You want to elevate your heart rate, increase blood flow, and fully wake your nervous system. The science here is clear. Morning exercise increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, essentially fertilizer for your brain that enhances learning, memory, and emotional regulation. It elevates mood-regulating neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. It reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. You're literally optimizing your biochemistry for emotional resilience before your day begins. But there's something deeper happening. When you complete this physical activation, especially on days you don't feel like it, you're proving something to yourself. You're demonstrating that you control your actions regardless of how you feel. This is warrior discipline manifested. Your feelings suggest staying in bed. Your commitment gets you moving. This daily victory creates momentum that carries into larger challenges. Step 3 is the clarity session, 3 minutes of focused attention on your priorities. Pull out your journal or a simple notepad. Write down the 3 most important tasks for today. Not everything you need to do, just the 3 that matter most. Then write 1 potential obstacle you might face and how you'll handle it. Finally, identify 1 opportunity for growth today, perhaps a micro battle or a chance to practice a skill you're developing. This clarity session prevents you from drifting through your day reactively. You've defined success in advance. You've anticipated challenges and prepared responses. You've primed yourself for growth. Research on implementation intentions shows that people who specify when, where, and how they'll act are significantly more likely to follow through. You're not leaving your day to chance. You're architecting it. Notice what you're not doing in this clarity session. You're not writing endless to-do lists. You're not planning every minute. You're not trying to control everything. You're identifying what matters most and setting intention around it. This is strategic focus, the warrior's ability to identify the critical objective and direct energy there while accepting that peripheral matters will sort themselves. Step 4 is the midday recalibration, a 2-minute pause in the middle of your day to check your state and adjust course if needed. Set an alarm for your typical lunchtime or mid-afternoon slump. When it sounds, stop whatever you're doing. Close your eyes. Take 5 deep breaths. Ask yourself 3 questions. How am I feeling right now? Am I aligned with my morning intention? What do I need for the rest of the day? This recalibration prevents emotional drift. Often, we start the day well-intentioned but gradually get pulled into reactivity, stress, and scattered attention. By midday, we've completely lost our center without realizing it. This brief pause creates awareness. Maybe you've become tense and need to relax your shoulders. Maybe you've rushed through tasks and need to slow down. Maybe you've been too serious and need to lighten up. Small adjustments now prevent major corrections later. The midday recalibration also serves as a pattern interrupt. If you're stuck in frustration, worry, or overwhelm, this forced pause breaks the cycle. You step out of the river of activity to observe the current. From this vantage point, you can choose whether to continue as you are or shift direction. This is emotional flexibility in action, the capacity to notice your state and adjust it. Step 5 is the evening integration, 10 minutes of reflection before your day fully ends. This isn't just journaling about what happened. It's deliberate extraction of wisdom from experience. Sit with your journal and reflect on 3 specific things. 1 challenge you faced and how you handled it, 1 moment you're grateful for, and 1 lesson you learned today. The challenge reflection builds resilience by helping you see that you handled difficulty. Even if imperfectly, you navigated today's obstacles. This creates evidence of your capacity, strengthening your belief that you can handle future challenges. The gratitude practice counterbalances our brain's negativity bias, the tendency to fixate on problems while ignoring positives. By consciously noting good moments, you train your attention toward appreciation rather than complaint. The lesson extraction is perhaps most important. Every day contains dozens of learning opportunities that most people miss because they never pause to process them. That awkward conversation taught you something about communication. That frustration revealed an unmet need. That moment of joy showed you what truly matters. By consciously reflecting, you transform raw experience into integrated wisdom. You're not just living days. You're learning from them. Research on learning and memory shows that reflection and consolidation are when actual learning happens. Experience alone doesn't teach. Reflection on experience teaches. This is why some people repeat the same year 30 times while others grow exponentially. The difference is deliberate integration. Warriors don't just experience battles. They study them, extract lessons, and apply insights to future engagements. Step 6 is the release ritual, 5 minutes of conscious letting go before sleep. Your day contains stresses, frustrations, worries, and tensions. If you carry these into sleep, you compromise rest quality and wake already burdened. The release ritual creates a boundary between day and night, between activity and rest, between doing and being. This can take many forms. Some warriors prefer physical release through stretching or progressive muscle relaxation, systematically tensing and releasing each muscle group. Others prefer mental release through visualization, imagining worries as objects placed in a box that's closed and set aside. Others prefer emotional release through breathwork, using extended exhales to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and signal safety to the body. Experiment to find what works for you, but commit to some form of release ritual nightly. You're training your nervous system that the day is complete, that vigilance can rest, that you're safe now. This signals your body to shift from sympathetic activation to parasympathetic recovery, from doing to restoring. Better sleep isn't a luxury. It's the foundation of emotional resilience. When you're well rested, challenges that would devastate an exhausted person become manageable obstacles. Step 7 is the weekly review, a 30-minute session each week to assess your trajectory and adjust your approach. This is when you zoom out from daily details to see larger patterns. Review your daily journals from the past week. Notice themes. What emotions came up repeatedly? What challenges recurred? What victories emerged? What growth occurred? From this review, identify one thing to continue, one thing to change, and one thing to experiment with in the coming week. Maybe you notice you're consistently stressed on certain days, so you'll adjust your schedule. Maybe you see a pattern of avoidance around a particular challenge, so you'll address it directly. Maybe you discover that a practice you started is genuinely helping, so you'll deepen your commitment to it. The weekly review prevents you from endlessly repeating patterns while hoping for different results. You're operating with the intentionality of a scientist running experiments on your own life. You try things, gather data, analyze results, and adjust methodology. This is how transformation happens, not through dramatic overnight change, but through small weekly adjustments compounded over time. This 7-step routine encompasses daily practices and weekly integration. It's comprehensive but not overwhelming. Morning anchor, physical activation, clarity session, midday recalibration, evening integration, release ritual, and weekly review. Together, these steps create a complete system for building and maintaining unshakable emotional strength. The question is simple: will you commit? The long-term development model for lasting transformation. Now let's address the timeline of transformation. People want instant results. They want to read one book, attend one seminar, try one technique, and suddenly become different. This isn't how human development works. Real transformation follows predictable stages. Understanding this model prevents discouragement and builds realistic expectations. Stage 1 is awareness, typically the first 2 weeks of practice. This is when you're simply noticing patterns you've been unconscious of for years. You start recognizing emotional triggers. You catch yourself reacting automatically. You observe how certain situations consistently affect your state. Nothing has changed yet in terms of your behavior, but everything has changed in terms of your consciousness. You're waking up to your patterns. This stage can be uncomfortable. You might feel worse before you feel better because you're now aware of dysfunction you previously ignored. This is good. You can't change what you're not aware of. The warrior embraces this discomfort, knowing it's the necessary first step. Research on behavior change confirms this: awareness precedes action. You must see the pattern before you can interrupt it. Your focus during stage 1 is simple. Practice the 7-step routine consistently and notice everything without judgment. You're gathering data, becoming a student of yourself. Don't try to change everything at once. Just observe. Keep your daily integration journal. Notice patterns. Build the foundation of self-awareness that all future growth rests upon. Stage 2 is experimentation, typically weeks 3 through 8. Now that you're aware of your patterns, you begin testing different responses. When criticism comes, instead of your usual defensive reaction, you try the pause and evaluate approach. When anxiety arises, instead of avoidance, you try sitting with it. When anger emerges, instead of suppression, you try conscious expression. Some experiments will work beautifully. Others will fail spectacularly. This is expected and valuable. You're discovering what works for your unique personality, circumstances, and challenges. What works for someone else might not work for you. This experimentation phase is where you customize the universal principles to your specific life. The key attitude during experimentation is curiosity rather than judgment. You're not failing when something doesn't work. You're gathering information. Thomas Edison's famous quote applies here: "You're not failing to find solutions, you're successfully discovering what doesn't work." Each experiment, whether successful or not, narrows the path toward what will work for you long term. Stage 3 is integration, typically weeks 9 through 20. Certain practices and approaches have proven effective through your experimentation. Now you're integrating them into your automatic responses. This is where transformation deepens from conscious technique to natural tendency. You no longer have to remind yourself to breathe when stressed. Your body automatically regulates. You no longer have to force yourself to reframe challenges. Your mind naturally seeks growth opportunities. Integration happens through repetition. Neuroscience reveals that repeated behaviors create stronger neural pathways. What requires significant conscious effort initially becomes progressively easier until it's virtually automatic. This is habit formation at the neurological level. You're literally rewiring your brain through consistent practice. Don't be discouraged by how long integration takes. 20 weeks might seem long, but consider that you've spent years or decades building your current patterns. Those patterns won't dissolve in a few weeks. The warrior embraces the timeline, trusting the process. Every day of practice, even imperfect practice, strengthens the new pathways and weakens the old ones. Stage 4 is embodiment, typically beginning around month 6 and deepening indefinitely. This is when emotional resilience stops being something you do and becomes something you are. The practices are no longer external techniques you apply. They're expressions of who you've become. You don't practice responding calmly to criticism. You are someone who responds calmly to criticism. This isn't subtle. This is the difference between acting like a warrior and being a warrior. Embodiment doesn't mean perfection. You'll still have difficult days, emotional reactions, and moments of weakness. But your baseline has shifted. Your default state is more resilient. Your recovery time is faster. Your capacity for difficulty is greater. The challenges that would have devastated you 6 months ago are now manageable obstacles. This is genuine transformation, not just intellectual understanding or temporary improvement, but fundamental shift in your way of being. The long-term development model reveals a crucial truth: transformation is inevitable if you remain consistent. Not if you're perfect, but if you're consistent. You don't need to execute the 7-step routine flawlessly every day. You just need to show up more often than not, to keep practicing even when you don't see immediate results, to trust the process when your progress feels invisible. Here's the commitment that changes everything: 90 days of consistent practice. Not perfect practice, consistent practice. For 90 days, you'll implement the 7-step routine to the best of your ability. Some days will be beautiful. Some days will be awful. Neither matters as much as showing up. After 90 days, assess honestly. If you've genuinely practiced consistently, you will have transformed. Not completely, but significantly. And that transformation will motivate the next 90 days, and the next, until this way of being becomes simply who you are. Designing your life for emotional resilience. Beyond daily practices, warriors design their entire lives to support resilience rather than undermine it. Most people unknowingly structure their lives in ways that guarantee emotional exhaustion. They take jobs that drain them, maintain relationships that deplete them, live in environments that stress them, and wonder why they struggle with resilience. The warrior recognizes that environmental design is as important as personal practice. Let's start with your physical environment. Your surroundings significantly impact your emotional state, often below conscious awareness. Cluttered, chaotic spaces create mental clutter and emotional chaos. Dark, cramped spaces increase depression and anxiety. Noisy environments elevate cortisol and reduce focus. You might not consciously notice these effects, but your nervous system does. Assess your primary environments: home, workspace, and any place you spend significant time. Ask yourself, does this environment support or undermine my resilience? Practically, this means creating spaces that are organized, clean, adequately lit, relatively quiet, and contain elements that bring you peace. Perhaps plants, perhaps meaningful objects, perhaps art that inspires you. You're not decorating for aesthetics alone. You're designing for emotional well-being. Research in environmental psychology confirms that your surroundings affect mood, stress levels, and cognitive function. People in well-designed spaces report lower anxiety, better focus, and greater life satisfaction. This isn't superficial. Your environment sends constant signals to your nervous system about whether you're safe, whether you're valued, whether life is manageable. Design environments that send the right signals. Next, examine your relationship ecosystem. You become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. If those 5 people are negative, reactive, trauma-prone, or emotionally unstable, you will struggle to maintain resilience no matter how much you practice. Conversely, if you surround yourself with people who are calm, growth-oriented, supportive, and emotionally mature, their influence elevates your baseline. This doesn't mean abandoning everyone who isn't perfect. It means being strategic about where you invest your relational energy. Minimize time with people who consistently drain you without reciprocating support. Maximize time with people who challenge you to grow, celebrate your progress, and model the qualities you're developing. Sometimes the most important decision for your resilience is who you allow into your inner circle. If you're stuck in draining relationships you can't exit, like certain family members or colleagues, implement strategic boundaries. Limit interaction time. Prepare yourself mentally before engagement. Decompress afterward. Don't let their chaos become your chaos. The warrior can care about someone without absorbing their emotional dysfunction. Compassion doesn't require sacrifice of your own well-being. Your information diet is equally crucial. What you consume mentally affects you as profoundly as what you consume physically. If you start every day reading news designed to provoke outrage and fear, if you spend hours on social media comparing yourself to others' curated highlights, if you consume endless entertainment that glorifies dysfunction, you're poisoning your emotional resilience. Audit your information consumption. What news sources do you follow? What social media do you engage with? What shows do you watch? What books do you read? What podcasts do you hear? Each of these inputs either strengthens or weakens your resilience. Choose consciously. Seek content that informs without inflaming, that challenges without demoralizing, that entertains without diminishing. Consider implementing information boundaries. Perhaps you check news once daily rather than constantly. Perhaps you spend 30 minutes on social media instead of 3 hours. Perhaps you balance every hour of consumption with an hour of creation or contemplation. The warrior controls information flow rather than being controlled by it. Finally, design your schedule for sustainability. Many people structure their lives at maximum capacity with no buffer. Every hour is scheduled. Every commitment is urgent. There's no space for rest, reflection, or unexpected challenges. This is a recipe for burnout, not resilience. When life inevitably throws curveballs, and it will, you have no capacity to handle them because you're already maxed out. Build white space into your schedule. These are periods with no commitments, no agenda, no pressure. Time to think, to rest, to process, to simply be. This might feel unproductive, but it's essential. Your mind needs downtime to integrate experiences, consolidate learning, and restore resources. Without this, you're constantly depleting without replenishing. The warrior understands that less is often more. Instead of cramming your schedule with dozens of commitments, identify the few that truly matter and do those excellently. Instead of maintaining hundreds of shallow relationships, cultivate a few deep ones. Instead of pursuing every opportunity, choose strategically based on your core values. This isn't about doing less. It's about doing what matters most with the energy and presence it deserves. Leading yourself, awakening your inner warrior. Everything we've discussed ultimately comes down to self-leadership, the capacity to direct your own development with clarity and conviction. Most people outsource their leadership. They wait for circumstances to improve, for others to validate them, for motivation to strike. The warrior takes complete ownership of their growth regardless of external conditions. Self-leadership begins with radical responsibility. This means accepting that while you don't control what happens to you, you absolutely control how you respond. Every circumstance, no matter how difficult, presents a choice about who you'll be within it. The warrior refuses to play victim, not because victimization never happens, but because victim identity destroys agency. This can be challenging to hear, especially if you've experienced genuine hardship. But consider this carefully. Acknowledging that terrible things happen and that they weren't your fault is different from giving those things permanent power over your present and future. The warrior says, yes, that happened, and it was wrong, and I didn't deserve it, and now what? I'm still here. I still have choices. I still have agency. What will I do with it? Radical responsibility is liberating because it returns power to you. As long as your well-being depends on others changing, circumstances improving, or the past being different, you're powerless. The moment you accept that your response is always within your control, you reclaim power. This doesn't make challenges easier, but it makes them navigable. Self-leadership also requires vision clarity. Where are you going? Who are you becoming? Most people drift through life reacting to circumstances rather than moving toward a deliberate vision. The warrior knows their destination. Not every detail, but the general direction. Are you becoming more calm or more chaotic? More disciplined or more scattered? More compassionate or more callous? You're always becoming something. The question is whether it's intentional. Take time to define your warrior identity. Not who you wish you were or who others expect you to be, but who you're genuinely committed to becoming. Write a description of yourself as the fully embodied warrior. How do you handle challenges? How do you treat others? How do you spend your time? How do you respond to setbacks? This description becomes your North Star, the vision that guides daily choices. With radical responsibility and vision clarity established, the final element of self-leadership is decisive action. Warriors don't wait for perfect clarity or ideal conditions. They assess available information, make the best decision possible, and move forward. They know that action creates information, that doing reveals what planning cannot. Sometimes the best way to gain clarity is to start moving and adjust course as you go. This doesn't mean recklessness. It means bias toward action rather than endless deliberation. When facing a choice, give yourself a decision deadline. Gather information until that deadline, then decide and commit. Second guessing after commitment wastes energy. Make the decision, extract lessons from the outcome, and use those lessons to inform future decisions. This is how you build decision-making capacity, through practice, not through avoiding choices until certainty arrives. The inner warrior you're awakening isn't someone new. It's who you've always been beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and self-doubt. Every human possesses this capacity for strength, resilience, and courageous living. Most never access it because they never commit to the practices that reveal it. You're different. You've made it this far. You've learned the principles. You've received the practices. Now comes the most important part, sustained commitment. Closing, your unshakable mind and strengthened heart. We've reached the end of this book, but the beginning of your true journey. Everything you've learned here is theoretical until you practice it, potential until you embody it, knowledge until you live it. The gap between knowing and being is bridged by one thing alone: consistent practice over time. There are no shortcuts. There is only the path, walked one step at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. You now possess the complete system for becoming emotionally unshakable. The 7-step daily routine that structures your practice. The long-term development model that sets realistic expectations. The life design principles that create supporting environments. The self-leadership framework that puts you in control of your growth. Everything you need is here. The only question remaining is whether you'll use it. Let me be direct about what lies ahead. This path is difficult. Some days you'll execute beautifully. Others you'll fail completely. You'll have periods of rapid growth followed by frustrating plateaus. You'll face challenges that test everything you've learned. You'll question whether this matters, whether you're making progress, whether you should quit. This is all normal. This is all part of the path. The warrior expects this and continues anyway. Remember why you started this journey. Something in you recognized that living at the mercy of emotions and circumstances isn't living fully. Something in you knew you're capable of more, that you possess untapped reserves of strength, that life is calling you toward growth. That something was right. You are capable of becoming unshakable. Not perfect, not superhuman, but genuinely resilient in ways that transform your entire life experience. The transformation you're building extends far beyond yourself. When you become emotionally resilient, you show others that it's possible. Your calm in crisis gives others permission to find their own calm. Your recovery from setbacks teaches them recovery is possible. Your consistent growth inspires their commitment. You become a living example that adversity doesn't have to diminish us, that challenges can refine us, that we can become stronger rather than bitter through life's difficulties. This is the warrior's ultimate purpose, not to prove personal superiority, but to demonstrate human possibility. Every time you choose courage over comfort, growth over stagnation, response over reaction, you're not just changing yourself. You're changing what those around you believe is possible for themselves. This ripple effect is how individual transformation becomes collective elevation. As we close, I want to leave you with one final truth. You already are the warrior you're seeking to become. Every quality you admire in warriors throughout history, the courage, the discipline, the resilience, the compassion, all of these exist within you right now. They're not gifts bestowed upon special people. They're capacities inherent in human consciousness, waiting to be developed through practice. Your task isn't to become someone different. Your task is to remove everything that obscures your warrior nature. The fear, the doubt, the limiting beliefs, the reactive patterns, these aren't who you are. They're habits you've learned that can be unlearned. Beneath them is your essential nature, already whole, already strong, already unshakable. The practices in this book don't create this nature. They reveal it. So commit now to 90 days of practice. Not perfect practice, but sincere effort. Implement the 7-step routine. Track your development through the stages. Design your life to support your growth. Lead yourself with conviction. When you stumble, and you will, return to practice. When you doubt, and you will, return to your vision. When you're tired, and you will be, return to your commitment. 90 days from now, you will look back at who you are today with compassion and pride. Compassion for the struggles you're currently facing. Pride at the dedication you're about to demonstrate. The person you're becoming is already proud of you for starting this journey. Honor that future self by becoming them through disciplined practice. Your unshakable mind is being forged in the daily fires of practice. Your strengthened heart is being built through conscious cultivation of resilience. You are becoming the warrior you were always meant to be. Not through dramatic transformation, but through steady commitment to growth. The path is clear. The practices are proven. The only variable is your commitment. Will you walk this path? Will you do the work? Will you become unshakable? I believe you will. More importantly, somewhere deep inside, you believe it too. That belief brought you to this book. Let that belief carry you through the practices. Let it sustain you when motivation fades. Let it remind you of who you're becoming when current circumstances suggest otherwise. Go now, warrior. Your transformation awaits. Your unshakable life is calling. The world needs your strength, your wisdom, your example. But first, you need to build it. One practice at a time. One day at a time. Starting now. Starting with the very next choice you make. Will it align with who you're becoming? If yes, make that choice. Then make the next one. And the next. This is how warriors are born. This is how unshakable resilience is built. This is your path. Walk it with courage, commitment, and unwavering dedication to becoming your highest self. The warrior's journey has begun. Your journey has begun. Welcome home to who you've always been. Welcome to your unshakable self.